This is Wizard Grandpa's Stories.
Oh, hello, hello, hello. There you are. How nice to see you. You're just in time for another story. This one is about Anansi the spider. And this time, there is no mention of his friend Tiger. It's a different story. It's called Anansi and the Pot. Now, Anansi lived in the jungle with all the other animals. Now, there was one animal in particular who liked to tease Anansi, and that was Monkey. Now, you may well think Anansi deserved to be teased sometimes, for he himself liked to tease other animals, especially Tiger. But this animal teased Anansi mercilessly. He liked to hide in the trees, and when Anansi came out of his house, he would throw nuts at him and laugh and laugh and laugh. Well, Anansi became tired of this and decided he wanted to go away for a few days so Monkey couldn't tease him. So he said to his wife and to his mother and to his children, "I'm going away to stay with my friend Rabbit on the other side of the forest. And that horrible monkey won't be able to find me there." Well, they all agreed that he should go, and off he went. It was a long way to Rabbit's house, so Anansi had to rest on the way. He fell asleep under a huge tree. It was a kind of tree he'd never seen before. It had something magical about it. So Anansi dozed under the shade of the branches of the magic tree. And when he woke up, there in front of him was a pot. A big, round cooking pot. Well, Anansi was surprised to see that there. It hadn't been there when he fell asleep. So he got up and he looked at the pot and walked around it and looked inside it. It was completely empty. "Well," said Anansi, "you're not much good. A pot with no food inside. What use are you?" Well, something very strange happened, which is that the pot replied to Anansi. "Don't be rude to me, Spider. I am a cooking pot. I am a very good cooking pot." Oh, said Anansi, rather surprised to hear a pot talking to him. "I beg your pardon, pot. If you are a cooking pot, where is your food?" The pot said to him, "You have to say my name." "What is your name?" asked Anansi. "My name," said the pot, "is Work Let Me See." "That's a strange name," said Anansi. And then he said, "Work Let Me See." Well, steam started rising out of the pot. And in no time at all, the pot was full to the brim with the most delicious smelling food. Said Anansi, "that smells wonderful. I wonder if it tastes as good." And he started to gobble and gobble and gobble. And he ate all the food in the pot. Well, this was indeed a magic pot. But before Anansi could take it home and tell all the family about it, he thought he really ought to test it one more time. So he sat down under the boughs of the tree, dozed for a little while until he was hungry again, and then stood up and once more he said, "Work Let Me See." The pot began to steam. Food appeared and bubbled right up to the very brim. Oh, it was such a delicious stew, and Anansi ate it all. "Well, pot," said Anansi, "you are a very special pot, a very beautiful, a wonderful pot. I would like to take you home with me, and then we can eat your beautiful food forever." The pot said, "That's fine, I like to make food for people. But there is one thing you must be very careful of. You must not wash me." "Oh," said Anansi, "my wife, she loves to scrub the pots and the pans and make them clean and shiny." "You must not do that to me," said the pot. "Whatever you do, don't wash me." So Anansi picked up the pot and took it home. And he said to his wife and children, "Now, I will do all the cooking from now on. You don't need to bother." And he put the pot into his own room, closed the door so that no one could see, and he said quietly, "Work, let me see." And the steam began to rise from the pot, and the food bubbled up to the top of it. He opened the door, took in plates from the family, loaded them up with beautiful food, and they all gobbled it up. Oh, this was wonderful. And so this went on for the next few days. Anansi putting the pot into his own room, saying the words and giving the food to the family. They loved it. Anyway, they were, of course, very curious about what was going on. So Anansi's wife told one of Anansi's children to watch through the keyhole when Anansi was doing whatever he did with that pot. So Anansi's smallest son watched through the keyhole and listened very carefully. And when Anansi went out after lunch, he said to Anansi's wife, his mother, "I saw Papa speak to the pot, and he said, 'Work, let me see.' And the pot filled up with food. I think you can do the same, Mother." Anansi's wife crept into his room. She crept up to the pot and said, "Work, let me see." And the pot began to steam, and the food bubbled up to the very top of the pot until it was full of the most delicious stew you can imagine. The family ate it all, even without Anansi. And when the meal was done, Anansi's wife took the pot into the kitchen and gave it a good scrub until it was shining clean. Then she put it back into Anansi's room. Well, Anansi came home and it was supper time. He crept into his room and said, "Work, let me see." And nothing happened. "Work, let me see." Nothing happened. "Work, let me see." Nothing happened. The pot was silent. And then Anansi noticed it was shiny as shiny could be. Someone had cleaned the pot against his express instructions. And the magic was gone. Well, Anansi was angry. He was furious, but mainly he was sad. That food had been wonderful. Well, he didn't say anything to his wife or his children. He understood what it was like to be curious, but he was determined to get another pot. So he took the pot with him and he went out again into the long journey to Rabbit's house and found the magic tree where he'd fallen asleep and found the pot. He sat down and put the pot there. And he said in a nice, loud, clear voice, "Dear magic tree, thank you for the beautiful pot you gave me. Unfortunately, it's not working anymore. Could you please give me another one?" And he fell asleep. When he woke up, there was no pot at all there. Not the old one, and certainly not a new one. Instead, hanging on a branch, there was a whip. This was rather strange. Anansi stood up and went over to the whip and said, "This is curious. I left a pot here, but now I'm left with a whip. What on earth does this mean?" A voice came from the whip. "Don't call me Whip. That's not my name." Oh, said Anansi. for he didn't know the whip could talk. "I beg your pardon. What is your name, then?" "My name is Work, Let Me See." "Very well, then," said Anansi. "Nice to meet you. Work, let me see." And with that, the whip jumped off the branch and started beating Anansi. Beating and beating as only a whip could. "Ow, ow, ow!" cried Anansi. "Ow!" And he ran down the road. The whip chased after him, beating him and beating him and beating him. Whip, whip, whip. "Ow, ow, ow!" Anansi ran as fast as he could and as long as he could, until he had learned his lesson. Be grateful for the good things you already have in your life and care for them. And if you have a magic pot, then enjoy it for as long as you can. This was the story of Anansi and the pot. I hope you enjoyed it. And thank you for coming to Wizard Grandpa Stories. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And bring all your friends with you when you come back. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.